The automatic doors of Harrod's superstore slid open with a hiss, letting in a rush of cool air mixed with the faint aroma of polished tiles and expensive perfume. Tall shelves glistened with goods wrapped in gold and silver packaging, the kind of place where people didn't just shop for food, they shopped for status. At the far end of the aisle, a man in an impeccably tailored navy suit pushed a sleek black wheelchair. His brown leather shoes clicked against the shiny marble floor, announcing wealth in every step. The man was Alexander Whitmore, one of Europe's most influential billionaires, an oil tycoon who turned technology investor. Every magazine had called him untouchable, powerful, untamed. In the chair sat his daughter, Sophia Whitmore, just 9 years old. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her pale face, and her blue eyes scanned the world with a tired, distant sadness. Sophia had been confined to the wheelchair for 3 years, ever since a tragic car accident shattered her spine. She could not walk. Doctors from Switzerland to America had told Alexander the same thing: your daughter may never walk again. And so, though his empire grew larger each day, Alexander carried a hidden wound that no money could heal. As father and daughter turned into the cereal aisle, something unexpected happened. A boy stepped in front of them. He was dark-skinned, barefoot, and his clothes looked 2 sizes too big, patched in awkward places. His eyes, however, deep, brown, and alive, were impossible to ignore. He stood there, blocking the billionaire's path, his hands slightly trembling but his jaw set with determination. "Sir," the boy said softly, then louder, "Sir, I can heal her." Alexander froze. For a split second, silence fell between the three of them, the billionaire, the crippled girl, and the poor boy. Then, a bitter laugh burst from Alexander's lips, sharp and cold. "You," his voice echoed in the polished aisle. "You claim you can heal my daughter. Do you even know who you're speaking to?" The boy swallowed hard but didn't step back. "I know who you are. Everyone knows Alexander Whitmore, but I also know this: money cannot heal her. I can." Sophia's head lifted slightly. For the first time in weeks, her lips curved into a faint smile, curious about this strange boy. "What is your name, child?" she asked in a whisper. "My name is Kwame, miss," he replied. His accent carried the melody of West Africa, each syllable deliberate. "And I have the gift of healing." Alexander barked another laugh and shook his head. He crouched beside his daughter, ignoring Kwame. "Sophia, don't listen to him. Some street children are trained to say anything for money." He stood, glaring at the boy. "Move aside before I call security." But Kwame didn't move. His bare feet stood firm on the cold floor. "I don't want your money," Kwame said, his voice cracking but filled with courage. "I only want a chance. Let me lay my hands on her just once. If nothing happens, you will never see me again." Sophia's small hands tightened on the armrests of her wheelchair. She looked up at her father with pleading eyes. "Papa, let him try." Alexander's chest tightened. He hated when Sophia called him Papa instead of Dad. It reminded him of her innocence, of the little girl who used to dance barefoot in their garden before the accident. His jaw clenched. "Sophia, don't get your hopes up. This is nonsense." "Please," she whispered, her voice fragile, "just once." For a moment, the billionaire's pride wrestled with his daughter's desperation. His empire had been built on dismissing foolishness, on never letting emotions rule his decisions. And yet, her eyes were the only thing that could bend his iron heart. Finally, Alexander sighed. "Fine, you have 2 minutes, then you disappear." Kwame's eyes shone. He stepped closer and knelt in front of Sophia. His hands, rough from street labor, trembled as they hovered above her knees. The girl's heart raced. No one had ever spoken to her with such certainty before. But as Kwame closed his eyes, a shout pierced the aisle. "Hey, get away from them!" 2 uniformed security guards came storming in, alerted by a passerby. One grabbed Kwame by the arm and yanked him backward. Alexander straightened, anger flooding his face. "I told you security was an option. Take him outside." "No," Sophia cried, her hands gripping the wheelchair. "Papa, please don't let them take him." Kwame struggled in their grip, his voice rising. "Just give me one chance she can walk again." The boy's cries echoed as he was dragged toward the exit. Shoppers paused, some shaking their heads, others whispering about the foolishness of street kids. Sophia sobbed, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Papa, please, please." But Alexander stood frozen, torn between protecting his daughter from disappointment and wondering why those words from a barefoot boy stung him more than all the doctor's verdicts combined. As the doors slid shut behind Quame, Sophia lowered her head and whispered, almost to herself, "I believe him." That evening, the Whitmore mansion loomed like a fortress on the outskirts of London. Chandeliers glistened, marble floors shone, and priceless art lined the halls. Yet inside Sophia's bedroom, wealth meant nothing. She sat in her wheelchair by the window, staring out at the moonlit garden. The events of the supermarket replayed in her head. Quame's voice. His eyes. His conviction. Something about him had been different, like he knew something no one else did. Her father entered quietly, carrying a tray with tea. Despite his wealth, Alexander insisted on small gestures for his daughter, perhaps as a way to prove to himself he was still human. "You're still awake," he said softly, setting the tray down. "I can't sleep," Sophia whispered. Alexander sat on the edge of her bed. For a long while, they said nothing. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. "Why did you let them take him away?" Alexander exhaled sharply. "Because, darling, he was a liar. A boy like that cannot heal you. He wanted attention, maybe money. You don't understand how the world works." "But what if he wasn't lying?" she asked, turning her sad eyes toward him. "What if he was sent for me?" "Sent?" Alexander frowned. "By who?" "By God." The word made Alexander flinch. Faith had died in him the night of the accident, when every prayer went unanswered, when the strongest surgeons failed. He buried his grief in business deals and boardrooms, but hearing it from Sophia again, it struck him like a wound reopening. He cupped her face gently. "Sophia, don't cling to false hope. I've tried everything, there's nothing left." But her eyes, shimmering with tears, whispered back, "Then let me try." Across the city, in the shadow of crumbling buildings, Quame sat on a wooden crate near a flickering streetlight. His arm still hurt from where the guards had yanked him, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He closed his eyes and whispered into the night, "Lord, why did you send me there if he would not believe? Why did you let her cry?" The wind blew gently, carrying the faint scent of rain. Somewhere in his heart, Quame felt a tug, a quiet assurance. "This is not the end, you will see her again." Quame smiled faintly, wiping his tears. He knew what he had to do. The next morning, Alexander's phone buzzed with a news alert. Street boy claims he can heal billionaire's daughter. Public outcry follows Herod's incident. Photographs from shoppers had gone viral overnight. Images of Quame being dragged out while Sophia reached for him had sparked heated debates online. Some called it a scam, others called it a miracle lost. By afternoon, journalists camped outside the Whitmore mansion gates. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true your daughter believes in the boy? Will you allow him another chance? Do you fear what will happen if the world sees you ignore him?" Alexander slammed the window shut, fury boiling in his veins. He despised media pressure. But when he turned, Sophia was watching him from her chair, hope burning in her fragile face. "Papa," she said softly, "please let him come." And for the first time in years, Alexander Whitmore, the man who commanded empires, felt powerless before the plea of his little girl. The Whitmore mansion gates had never seen such chaos. By mid-morning, reporters, camera crews, and curious onlookers clogged the long driveway, flashing lights and microphones thrust forward each time a car rolled in. Alexander Whitmore sat in his study, the blinds drawn, his phone buzzing every other minute. On the massive oak desk in front of him lay a stack of newspapers. Each headline screamed the same story. Miracle boy denied access to billionaire's daughter. Faith or fraud, public demands chance for Sophia Whitmore. Money can't buy healing, but can a boy? Alexander slammed his fist onto the desk, sending pens scattering. He had spent his life building a reputation of control, yet one barefoot child had turned his name into a spectacle overnight. The door creaked open and Sophia wheeled herself in. Her golden hair was brushed neatly, but her eyes were tired from lack of sleep. "Papa," she whispered. Alexander turned to her, his face softening despite the storm inside him. "Sophia, you should be resting." "I can't rest," she replied, "not until I see him again." Alexander rubbed his temples. "You don't know what you're asking. If this boy fails, it will crush you." But what if he doesn't fail? She pressed, her small voice carrying the weight of faith he no longer had. Papa, all my life people told me I couldn't walk. Doctors, nurses, even you, and I believed them until he looked at me. For the first time, I felt hope. Her words pierced him deeper than any headline. For years, he had given her everything money could buy: therapy, equipment, tutors, luxury toys, but not hope, never hope. Alexander leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Silence stretched long between them, broken only by the ticking of the golden clock on the wall. Finally, he exhaled slowly. Fine, he murmured, I'll find him, but understand this, Sophia, if he is a fraud, if he hurts you, it ends immediately. Do you understand? Sophia's lips curved into a smile, tears glistening in her eyes. Thank you, Papa. Finding Quaim wasn't easy. He had vanished into the labyrinth of London's poorer districts, where narrow alleys twisted between rusting buildings and the scent of damp earth clung to every corner. But Alexander Whitmore wasn't a man who failed at finding things. By evening, one of his drivers returned with news. The boy lives in the abandoned railway quarters, sir. Alone, locals say he prays for the sick sometimes, some say they got better. Alexander frowned. Superstition, he muttered, but inside something stirred. That night, under the glow of street lamps, his black limousine pulled up to the crumbling railway building. The driver opened the door and Alexander stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against gravel. Inside, Quaim sat on the floor, a candle flickering beside him. He was whispering softly, hands folded, when the shadows of two tall men loomed over him. He lifted his head, calm despite their imposing presence. I knew you would come. Alexander narrowed his eyes. Did you? Quaim nodded slowly. Yes, because she called for me in her heart. The billionaire studied him. He expected fear, desperation, or cunning, but instead, Quaim's eyes radiated quiet certainty. Tomorrow, Alexander said coldly, you will come to my house. You will attempt whatever nonsense you believe you can do. If you fail, this ends, and I'll ensure no one ever hears your name again. Do you understand? Quaim rose to his feet, his small frame barely reaching Alexander's chest, yet he didn't flinch. I understand, but I will not fail. The next morning, tension thickened the Whitmore mansion like a storm cloud. The press swarmed outside the gates, waiting for the boy's arrival. Inside, servants whispered in corners, curious but afraid. Sophia sat in the grand living room, her eyes fixed on the doorway. She wore a simple white dress, her hair tied with a ribbon, her heart pounding in anticipation. When Quaim entered, escorted by security, her face lit up. You came, she whispered. Quaim bowed his head respectfully. I told you I would. Alexander sat across the room, arms folded, watching like a hawk. Let's get this over with. Sophia motioned for Quaim to come closer. The boy knelt beside her wheelchair, his hands hovering just above her legs. Do you believe? He asked softly. Sophia nodded, with all my heart. Quaim closed his eyes, his lips moved silently, whispering prayers no one else could hear. The room grew still, even the servants pausing to watch. For a moment nothing happened. Then Sophia gasped. A strange warmth spread through her legs like fire and light at once. Her fingers dug into the armrests as her body trembled. Alexander shot to his feet. What are you doing to her? Quaim didn't open his eyes. Do not fear, she is healing. Sophia's breathing quickened, tears streamed down her cheeks. Papa, I feel something, I feel my toes. Alexander froze. For years, those words had been impossible. Doctors said her nerves were dead, unresponsive, and yet her toes moved, faint but real, beneath the white dress. Gasps erupted from the servants. One covered her mouth, another crossed himself. Sophia sobbed with joy, her hands trembling. Papa, look, I can feel again. Alexander's throat tightened. For the first time in years, he was speechless. Quaim opened his eyes slowly, his face glowing with sweat but calm. It has begun, he said quietly, but she is not ready to walk yet. Her heart must believe fully, not just her body. Sophia gripped his hand. I believe I do. But Alexander's voice cracked through the room, raw and sharp. Enough. Everyone turned. The billionaire stood trembling, his face a storm of fear, pride, and disbelief. This cannot be real. It's a trick, some manipulation. I will not let you play with my daughter's emotions. Quaim met his eyes. You fear what you cannot control, but she is not yours to control, she belongs to hope. The words sliced through Alexander like a blade. Rage flared in him, rage at the boy, at himself, at the universe that dared mock his logic. Get out, he roared, before I throw you out myself. Sophia's cry pierced the air. No, Papa, please don't send him away. But security guards moved forward, gripping Quaim's arms once again. This time, Quaim did not resist. His voice remained calm as he looked back at Sophia. Do not fear, this is only the beginning. You will walk, Sophia, you will walk. And as they dragged him out, his words lingered like a fire in her chest. That night, the mansion was silent. Alexander paced his study like a lion in a cage, his mind a whirlwind. He had seen her toes move. He had seen it. But admitting it meant admitting he had been wrong, that there was something greater than his money, his logic, his control. The thought terrified him. Sophia, meanwhile, sat awake in her bed, her legs tingling with unfamiliar life. She whispered to herself again and again, I will walk, I will walk. By midnight, she slipped quietly out of her room, maneuvering her wheelchair down the long corridor. She knew where she was going. The gates. Quaim had been cast out, but she would find him. She had to. Her tiny hands wheeled herself through the cold night air until she reached the edge of the driveway. And there, by the road, sitting beneath a street lamp, was Quaim, waiting. When he saw her, he stood and smiled gently. I told you I would not leave. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Please don't give up on me. Quaim knelt beside her. I never will. Behind them, unseen in the shadows, Alexander stood watching. He had followed her, torn between dragging her back and listening to the boy's quiet conviction. His fists clenched, his heart battling itself. For the first time in decades, the billionaire felt something he couldn't buy, command, or silence. Fear. And deep hidden beneath it, hope. The night air was sharp and still, carrying the faint hum of the city in the distance. Sophia sat in her wheelchair at the mansion gates, staring up at Quaim beneath the street lamp. Her small hands trembled, not from fear but from a desperate longing she could no longer hide. You said I will walk again, she whispered, her voice shaky. But Papa doesn't believe you, he won't let you help me. Quaim's gaze was steady, his voice calm. It doesn't matter what he believes, it matters what you believe. Healing begins here. He tapped gently against her chest. In your heart. Sophia wiped at her tears. Then teach me, please, I want to believe with all of me. Behind them, hidden in the shadows of the tall gates, Alexander Whitmore stood motionless. He hadn't meant to follow his daughter, but when he realized she'd left her room, instinct drove him after her. Now, hearing her words and seeing the boy's unshakable composure, he felt a strange storm rising in his chest. Quaim knelt before Sophia, taking her frail hands in his own. Close your eyes, he said softly. See yourself walking, not in the chair, not leaning on anyone, walking, running, dancing. Do you see it? Sophia's eyes squeezed shut, her breath caught. Yes, she whispered. I see it. I'm in the garden, I'm running. Hold on to that, Quaim urged. His voice grew firmer. Don't let go no matter what happens, believe it with all your heart. Alexander's jaw tightened. He wanted to storm forward to drag his daughter away from this madness, but something held him back, something he couldn't name. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the master of the room. He felt like a witness. Sophia's body shuddered, her legs tingled with heat stronger than before. Her eyes flew open as a gasp escaped her lips. Quaim, it's happening again. Quaim closed his eyes, whispering words under his breath. His palms pressed lightly against her knees. The tingling grew into a pulse, a rhythm, as though her legs were waking from a deep, endless sleep. And then, Sophia screamed, not from pain but from shock. Her feet moved. Both of them. Her toes curled, her ankles shifted, her knees twitched violently as life surged back into them. Alexander stumbled forward from the shadows, his eyes wide, his lips parting in disbelief. No, this can't. Sophia's hands gripped the armrests. Papa, look, I can move my legs. The words shattered him. For 3 long years, those legs had been dead, lifeless, hopeless. And now, before his very eyes, they lived. Sophia's body trembled as she leaned forward. Help me, Quaim, help me stand. Quaim nodded slowly. Not me, you stand, Sophia, stand because you believe you can. Her hands tightened, her breath quickened. Slowly, shakily, she pressed her weight down, her knees wobbled, her muscles screamed in protest, but her legs obeyed. She rose. For the first time in 3 years, Sophia Whitmore stood on her feet. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her small voice broke into a sob. "Papa, I'm standing, I'm standing." Alexander fell to his knees on the gravel, his hands covering his face as his world crumbled. All the doctors, all the money, all the nights of despair, and yet this barefoot boy had done what the world said was impossible. Quame stepped back, allowing the moment to unfold. Sophia took a shaky step forward, then another, her arms reaching toward her father. Alexander caught her in his embrace, sobbing into her hair. For the first time in decades, the mighty billionaire broke not from loss but from overwhelming, unbearable joy. My darling," he cried. "You're walking, oh God, you're walking." Sophia clung to him, laughing and crying all at once. "Papa, I told you he could do it." Quame's quiet smile lingered as he turned to leave, content to disappear back into the night. But Alexander's voice stopped him. "Wait." The billionaire rose, his daughter still in his arms, his eyes raw with tears. He stepped toward Quame, every ounce of pride stripped away. "I was wrong," Alexander said hoarsely. "I mocked you, I doubted you, and yet you gave me back my daughter." His voice broke again. "How can I ever repay you?" Quame shook his head. "I don't want your money, I only wanted to give her hope." Alexander's lips trembled. He had never heard words so pure, so powerful. For a man who built empires on greed and ambition, it was like a mirror held up to his soul. "Then stay," he whispered. "Not as a servant, not as charity, but as family. Teach me what you know, teach us both." Quame hesitated, his eyes soft but wary. "I am only a boy." Alexander placed a hand firmly on his shoulder. "No, you are more than that. You are the answer to prayers I had long abandoned." Sophia slipped down from her father's arms, wobbling but steady, her eyes shining as she reached for Quame's hand. "Please stay with us." Quame's gaze flickered between the girl's pleading face and the man's humbled eyes. Slowly he nodded. "Then I will." The news spread like wildfire. Videos of Sophia walking for the first time filled headlines across the globe. Reporters camped outside the mansion for weeks, desperate to understand how a barefoot boy had accomplished what the world's best doctors could not. But Alexander kept the truth guarded. He gave no interviews, no explanations. To the world, it remained a mystery. To him, it was sacred. Inside the Whitmore estate, life transformed. Sophia walked the gardens daily, her laughter echoing across the roses. Each step reminded her of the miracle she had once thought impossible. Quame lived with them, not as a guest nor a servant, but as a brother to Sophia and in many ways, a son to Alexander. He ate at their table, studied in their library, and prayed in the quiet corners of the mansion. For the first time in decades, Alexander Whitmore found himself on his knees, not in defeat but in gratitude. The empire he built no longer mattered as much. What mattered was the daughter who danced again, the boy who restored hope, and the God he had forgotten but rediscovered through both. Months later, at a grand charity gala in Paris, Alexander Whitmore stood before a hall of the world's richest and most powerful. For once, he wasn't there to talk about oil, technology, or wealth. He placed his hand gently on Sophia's shoulder, who now stood proudly in a white dress, no wheelchair in sight. Beside her stood Quame, dressed neatly but still with the same quiet humility. Alexander cleared his throat, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Many of you know me as a man who has everything: wealth, power, influence, but what you don't know is that for years I had nothing because my daughter could not walk and I had lost all faith." The crowd shifted uneasily, their glasses of champagne pausing midair. "But then," Alexander continued, "a boy came into our lives, poor, barefoot, unwanted by the world. He told me something I laughed at. He told me he could heal my daughter." A murmur rippled through the audience. "I mocked him, I rejected him, and yet he was right. Because today my daughter walked again, not because of money, not because of medicine, but because of faith." He turned, gesturing toward Quame. "This boy reminded me of something I had forgotten, that miracles still exist. that hope can be born in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come from those the world overlooks. Tears glistened in Sophia's eyes as she squeezed Quame's hand. The hall erupted in thunderous applause, but Quame only bowed his head, quietly giving the glory to God. Alexander looked out at the sea of faces, men and women who worshipped money as he once had, and for the first time he didn't feel like one of them. He felt free. Beside him, his daughter laughed, her steps light, her spirit alive. And in his heart, Alexander Whitmore whispered the words he once thought he'd never say again. "Thank you."